Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives. It is Monday, the 21st of February, 2022. Wherever you are this morning, we welcome you to the broadcast. All the broadcast entities carrying us live, thank you, and we welcome you again. MTV on air, online, Mikey Live, TNR Communications, Party Grenada, KG9, Sister Isle Media in Carriacou. Good morning to the brothers and sisters out there in Carriacou, and everyone else joining us. Good morning to you. I am Brenda Batiste, and you're here bright and early for fresh perspectives and the perspectives of our expert talk panel, our Senator Christopher Deali and Mr. Byron Campbell. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Brenda. Good
How
morning to our viewers and listeners.
Morning?
Well, you know, I had a lovely thing over the weekend. I had roast breadfruit. When last you had roast breadfruit, Brenda?
Roast bread. Let me tell you, Senator Deali, I'm giving away a little secret. I like roast breadfruit a lot.
Yeah?
I really do. I really do. And I really like how they do it in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And the saltfish in the middle.
Yes, how they stuffed it. Yes,
right,
I really do.
I had roast breadfruit for the weekend, but Byron, I don't know if when last you had roast breadfruit. But it was a love. You know, my thing this morning is to say, Byron, I'm taking ahead of you with the issue of the scale insect. I saw the minister over the weekend speaking about this issue and what they plan to ramp up in terms of spraying and the bugs and so on. And I think it's an issue and a problem that's still plaguing us that needs to be dealt with as expeditiously as possible. So I think that is something we need to look at. And of course, the politics is we're having fun with the politics already. We've seen a lot of stuff happening, and so probably we could talk a little about that.
We have to talk about politics, but I want to go back to the scale insects, because actually the minister was on my farm when he was making those statements.
Oh, okay.
He was there last week, and we
from
were
1,000 pounds to zero.
Yeah, from 1,000 pounds to zero. And it's true in that the scale insect is having its day, and not only in Sousa, but in mango and guava and other fruits, citrus and other fruits.
And other trees that are not fruit trees, but trees.
I've been affected too. Like remember some dry forest trees.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where we are with it in terms of to what extent, because the government did bring in some
30,000 bugs.
30,000 ladybird beetles, which are a natural predator for the scale insect. But I think the quantities is inadequate. I mean, if you're going to get it really saturation, you know. So I think they are continuing with the spraying regime. I think so. We've seen a combination of factors, but I'm still saying that I think more resources need to go there. But it's an important effort and I think they are aware of the scale of the infestation and the potential to decimate our tropical fruit sector. So I'm pleased about that. The other related South-Up news was that from the police, the Predial larceny team, that they caught a major Predial larceny, major thief.
It's horrible to say that.
Thief. Yeah. Because I know this person. Well, I've seen them operate. You know, they would visit your farm, purchase from you, and then come back on their own when you're not there. So and they caught this individual with 350 pounds of South-Up, you know. Wow. So this was making the news. So this is a big deal. This is a good message. It's an important message because we have to find a way to stamp this out. And I think that catching a culprit and making a big deal out of it is going to be very, very, very important.
Yeah, I support that. I mean, just to stay on agriculture a little, I was in conversation with a good friend of mine the last couple of weeks, and he was mentioning the whole issue of breadfruit and breadfruit development. Apparently there's this webinar series going around about breadfruit and all the nutrients and all the stuff that you get from breadfruit, and there's now these new trees, by the time they reach 6 feet or 8 feet, they start to bear. And you're saying that you like to see government invest in breadfruit because breadfruit is becoming a big thing.
A big thing, yeah. A few years ago,
nutritionally and otherwise.
A few years ago, they brought in some varieties from the Pacific. I have one tree. It's a shorter tree. The texture, the taste is different. Brenda, you would love it. It's
creamy.
Creamy. That's the word. creamy, different, nice.
I
you
know it.
So
I
nice
know it.
consistency.
Nice.
Okay.
So I'm hoping the tree produce some more this year. I'm sure it
But
will
I
do
think
so.
it should
I
be
had
a
some
little more
breadfruit ice
widespread.
cream over the
Yeah,
Independence
breadfruit
weekend.
That is another thing.
That was really good.
Breadfruit ice cream,
Really
and then
Wow.
there's the breadfruit flour
The
industry
color
that's
is
developing
amazing,
now
yes.
as a big thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's something
There's a young lady in
could throw there, you
Concord
know.
that does a lot of breadfruit flour, sweet potato flour, and all of that, So people need to step out
Yeah.
and we need to know more about these things and
That's,
find
that's a
uses
big
for
issue.
them.
That's a big
So,
after my rose breadfruit experience, it's the breadfruit thing now.
that rose breadfruit thing, sometimes if it hit
Well,
the spot,
Oh yeah, it's a long time I didn't have rose breadfruit.
yeah, I like
last
rose breadfruit.
time we spoke about the SG, and the role they're playing, and we talk a number of things, notwithstanding the $30 million US dollars that's available. But they were on again talking about opportunities in ICT and
Yeah.
how, in fact, they can begin to do some investment there. And I think that'll be interesting for our guests today. But I think this is an important development because clearly what you want investors in this area because there's a great potential for job creation.
Well, I think there's another side to it that probably is not mentioned enough, and that is remittances. Now, remittances for us in these islands is a big thing.
It is.
Yeah.
But traditionally we would export our people to go in other countries,
Yeah.
work and remit.
Yeah.
Here it is, we could keep our people right in this jurisdiction, get contracts with these big companies, and still increase the remittances back home. So I think that is an avenue that is spoken about.
Yeah.
And something that we need to look at because there's no need to physically move anymore. You can stay within
Stay where you are.
any geographic space and offer your services and get contracts. And I think that is what was being alluded to by
that's
this gentleman from SU.
great potential.
So I think that is something that our young people have a special savvy for this technology thing that you and I, Byron, in our age group, we seem to have.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
absolutely. And this part of the world too, largely because of our neutral accent, because of our infrastructure, in utilities like telephone and electricity and all of that, you find that a lot of large companies come to this side of the world, and then the labor is cheaper. There was mention of that by the Prime Minister, and some people take umbrage to it, but it is a fact. People don't advertise it, but that's why they come in these parts. And that's how economies of scale work. We just seem to get so personal and touchy-feely about everything. But it's not like we are a huge, global economy.
Some companies
but,
go overboard with it.
Well,
I look at the example.
But yeah, you have to manage it because
Haiti.
they in places like India and all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, if they tell you, there's a lot of companies, and that's why I say the neutrality of how we speak, because there's a lot of companies, especially U.S. companies, they're now leaving the Pacific because of the customers in the U.S., how they can be brutal.
Yeah.
So they're coming to this side. So that's additional business. So basically what they were saying in terms of labor and all of that, ain't nothing new there. And the countries have to manage it to ensure that people don't come in and take advantage. And we have to start by strengthening here first. Because if we are setting poor examples with the sort of wages we are paying to our people, of course they think they could get away with it.
Well, what I saw, what's happening right now as we speak, in fact, there's huge demonstrations in Haiti. But that's mainly in offshore business and mostly in the clothing sector. Big demonstration, what the workers for better wages, what they're indicating that these companies are paying, they're earning less than $5 a day. So they are demonstrating against this, and these are big name companies in apparel businesses. And so I was making that point.
But you see the other side to that story as well,
yeah.
that a lot of these companies have paid the government of Haiti, they have paid up front, and the people getting the lower end of the stick.
Yeah.
So that is a management issue over there as well.
So they've dropped tools and they're in the streets. So I was just making the point that we need to ensure that we recognize that part of the lure is the cost of production, if you could call it that, cost of doing business.
I mean, the good thing in our
But that has value as well.
Of course.
Because if you're saying you're coming because of infrastructure, the neutrality of the accent, that has some value. So let's meet each other here.
That's correct.
I mean, the good thing about our jurisdiction is that we have labor laws that are not antiquated. You
That's
could
correct.
always say the labor laws could be improved.
Yeah.
And those of us in the private sector have our own issues with some of the things in the labor law, but we do have a labor law that protects.
It does,
And it does
for the most
give you,
part.
because it gives the employee a lot of room to do things, and unions and labor and so on. So that is a good thing as well. So it probably prevents companies from going the extra mile to exploit, and that is something that is noteworthy. But I think our young people have so many avenues, and I still go back to this issue of unemployment and people choosing not to work. It's a big issue we have in our country.
Yeah.
And still, I mean,
Literally choosing not to work.
yeah.
You've seen
Because
that.
you have, as I said before, eating here in Grenada is not necessarily linked to working.
But something I saw, like on a Saturday, I'm coming from the farm and coming along the West Coast, and every shop, every parlor scores a young man. I mean, the consumption of alcohol and drinks on a Saturday, well, I don't know, like it has to be over 100,000 bottles. It's huge. I don't know if you notice this, if you see it, if you observe it.
And then there's this issue that when you get paid on a fortnight Friday,
Yeah.
I don't see you on Saturday or next Monday. And it has to be because there is excesses
you're not showing
taking
up for
place.
work?
Yeah.
And you hear most guys in construction industry and so on, even in agriculture will tell you, when you pay on a fortnight Friday, you guys just don't turn up to work on a Monday because the excesses on the weekend, they spend, they drink heavy, and so on and so forth. So you have that aspect.
So discipline,
as well.
and there's a social dimension too. So the question is, particularly where the breadwinner stays the male, and in a lot of cases the woman is also engaged in work, but what percentage of that paycheck actually reaches the household?
Right.
Because women, for a fact, are better managers of money.
Oh, yeah.
By far, I've seen this, and therefore, but they're not even having the possibility of receiving that money to manage it to start with. And so this is something that, I don't know if it's education or information, but where does it go? But our male are delinquent in this regard.
Yeah, and I think there's an attitude adjustment, and it's difficult because the politics doesn't help it.
That's true. I mean, I stop
Politics
sometimes
talk
in a shop, like say in the village, and this guy, I know he's a daily paid worker. He's probably earning maybe $50-$60 a day, and wants to offer me drinks on a Friday, and I know that clearly he can't afford to. I deny, but there's a free spending approach. You see this?
It's about that. It's about a socialization has been there for quite a while. And with that comes the cooking as well.
Yeah.
The pots are on fire and we eat. And there's nothing wrong about that type of life in Grenada. I think it's just that it's going to an excess point or it's going to an extreme, and we need to pull it back and manage. Because
So here's how I kind of feel about it at the moment. I think men need propping up. Really and truly. There's so many things that we expect from our men. We always expect men to be strong, men to provide, men to just be there. But men are also beings like we are, and there's a lot of emotional and other support that they need that our society does not engender, because they are supposed to be this stoic creature. Nothing could faze them. And I think a lot of the shop and the drinking and so on is social and cultural behavior, but I think it is also an outlet for a lot of men, because you may find that there are a lot of men that are in homes where they live in houses, that are not homes, because in there may be a partner, or there may be circumstances that it's like it's laid at their feet. It's a constant, and feeling less of a man if they're not working, and all these different things. And so we have to watch that, because I say that to the backdrop that our suicide rates are going up, men, young boys and men. We are finding that more men are getting in trouble with the law, boys and men, even older men. Domestic abuse, intimate partner violence, that is going up as well. So to me, those are cries for help. And there are situations that we don't think about, like with child support and people raising a child together. Well, should raise a child together, but if two people have a child and the romantic relationship is over, the whole relationship breaks down.
Yeah.
Because on the other side, one partner feels, especially the woman, and women may disagree with this, but we know it to be true, that once the romantic side of it is over and we can no longer have access in that way to the gentleman and he has moved on, then the child becomes a totem pole. And we just keep moving it all over the place. So we also have these things. And I'm finding that we need to give men more opportunities to the kind of things we do for women. Give them avenues to vent, give them training, give them counseling, provide safe spaces for them. I always say, a lot of time we have health clinics. We don't need to throw men, have specific health clinics for men. Let them go where men are. Men have a problem showing up to find people like me to do a to do a prostate exam, you know? Do
true.
things like that.
That's
So that's how I feel about the whole thing
It's
with men
important
right now.
because I heard it was last week there was a news item that was talking about close the gap. You know, in terms of particularly, well, men and women, but focusing on male particularly, because men will say, well, you know, it's 6 years, it's 10 years, I haven't gone to a doctor, you know, and they feel proud about this, you know. And a lot of it has to do with information education. So I think there was a young group actually doing this, and I thought it was kudos, you know.
Well, I mean, Byron, comes back to your Empower point you made last Monday about 400 men enrolled in this program. And the hope here is that as the number of items that Brenda touched on, there's so much social issues with men that needs to be addressed.
And they just have to man up and bear it. It's a lot.
The question becomes, you know, how have society gotten to this point with our men in particular? Obviously, there has been a significant change. I mean, some of us could argue that our women have been thrown into positions of responsibility more than men, taking care of the family, taking care of the household, have sought to educate themselves now to get better equipped to deal with that, and women have now developed an independence level that sometimes I think men fear to a certain point.
Well,
and,
we are part of that as well, because I think once we become powerful, we take up the testosterone. We need to just take that down a bit.
And that marginalizes men as well to some degree.
Correct.
So it's a two-way. I mean, I always, when we talk about you know, sexuality and the whole issue of men and women and relationships, we also have to remember that it's supposed to be a joint as much as possible, 50-50 kind of thing. So, you know, it requires work on both sides so that this situation could get some resolution. But yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done with the men and our women as well. We don't need to leave them out. They need to be part of this.
It's a partnership.
Of course, and there is work there. There's a lot of social issues, and let's hope as we go forward, you know, some of these things can, and I hope in programs like Empower, you know, we'll touch on issues with that and give men the kind of level of confidence, because I believe that confidence issue is a big thing.
Yeah, and we need to provide more spaces for them to be able to, you know, I mean, and there are, you know, people might say soft things, like, for instance, I know, you know, couple of mornings, I think recently I've caught Aruna Neptune on Power FM. She has this ladies' room program, and you know, with men stating how they feel about things, and these little things, just giving men an opportunity to open up. People may look at it like, oh, what are they really talking about? No, the fact that a man could say, this is how I feel, or this is happening to me, you know, let's talk about it. That is important.
I can't help observing that you chose to stay on social issues this morning, not political issues. Well, there's a lot of political issues I
we'll
want to
get
talk
to that
about.
when
That's not deliberate, was it?
No. You see, we always go with how we feel, right?
I'm just asking.
We go with how we
Political
feel.
climate is definitely becoming
I want to talk about it.
So we know that, but you'd allow us to take the guests first?
Yes,
absolutely.
And then when we're through the guests, we'll get to those very exciting and orgasmic issues that you want to get on?
Is that the word? Orgasmic. You have to be careful.
Don't go there? Okay. All right. So, folks, if you're just joining us, thanks for joining us. This morning, our special guest is the Secretary General of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. And we take a quick break. We'll be right back on Perspectives.
Never in my wildest dreams would I have anticipated an Olympic Games during a pandemic. As if preparations weren't tough enough. Coronavirus became a new hurdle for me to overcome. And hurdling is not even my event. Nevertheless, I accepted my fate. There was so much to achieve and so many people counting on me. I had to do what I had to do. And one of those necessary steps was getting vaccinated. Not only to protect myself and my loved ones, but also because I was determined to secure another win for my country. Not even a pandemic would get in the way of that mission. I know my people well, and I know that the determination I possess is not a trait unique to just myself. It's in every Grenadian, the will to overcome and that desire to win. The fact of the matter is that if we as a people intend to come out of this pandemic victorious, we too must do what is necessary. We must follow the protocols, such as social distancing, wearing a mask properly. We must listen to the experts. We can make certain lifestyle changes to boost our health, like exercising regularly, eating the right foods. And also, we must strongly and absolutely consider getting vaccinated against COVID-19 and its variants. As someone who is vaccinated, I feel confident in being home, being able to participate and run again. And that's my dream, to see families running on the beaches again, to see children running on the playgrounds, shopkeepers running their businesses, bus drivers running the roads, and the love and happiness running through the heart and spirit of us all Grenadians. There's no one solution, but if we take the necessary steps, we will get back on our feet and we will get running again.
The COVID-19 vaccine continues to be available throughout our Tri-Island state, and it's free of cost. Protect yourself and your loved ones, and let's get back to life. Visit covid19.gov.gd for answers to your questions. Visit your nearest health center to access the vaccine. A message from the Ministry of Health.
Get vax. It's your best shot. Hello.
A message from the Ministry of Health.
Welcome back to Perspectives. It's now time to introduce our special guest panelist to you. He is Mr. Rodney Taylor. He is the Secretary General of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. And in case you're hearing about the CTU for the first time, it is an intergovernmental organization dedicated to promoting and supporting the development of the Caribbean Information and Communication Technologies, ICT, for the social economic development of the region. Mr. Taylor is a national of Barbados. He was appointed as the CTU Secretary General in March 2021. He holds a master's degree in Management and Information Systems from the University of Manchester in the UK and a postgraduate diploma in Public Sector Management from the University of the West Indies. Mr. Taylor's over 20 years of professional experience includes management of Information Systems Unit in Barbados, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and its overseas missions. He previously served the CTU between 2010 and 2014 as the Business Development and Operations Manager. He was formerly the Chief Digital Technology Officer with the Barbados Ministry of Information, Science and Smart Technology, where he was the technical lead on Barbados's digital transformation. Mr. Taylor is an advisor on internet governance and has published research on e-commerce diffusion in small island developing states in the Journal of Information Systems for Developing Countries. So ahead of a big announcement here sometime this week, it's our pleasure to introduce to you the Secretary General of the CTU, Mr. Rodney Taylor. Good morning, Mr. Taylor.
Good morning to you and to all of Grenada.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So through the CTU and CARICOM, because I know they have this synergetic relationship, what are the plans to coordinate and cooperate in the area of ICT for our territories? What are the main areas, the main
So,
plans?
thank you, and thanks for the introduction. And I hope no one is hearing about the CTU for the first time. But in any case, they'll get to know about us today. We have been established, as you mentioned, by CARICOM heads of government as far back as 1989, with a view to harmonizing telecommunications within the region. And of course, since then, telecommunications has changed dramatically. There have been advancements in technology and even how we communicate on our mobile phones and so on. And internet access has become so critical to all of us. So the CTU is responsible for what we call the CARICOM single ICT space, which is, it can be described as the digital arm of CSME. So how do we integrate the region from a technological point of view? How do we harmonize our legislation and policies in relation to technology? How do we move together so that we increase the investment within the ICT sector for CARICOM?
Right. And having said that, though, in how as we're trying to harmonize and we're building this, based on it must be powered by knowledge, of course.
Yes.
You know, so how do we plan to make provisions for everyone in the community to participate in that?
Well, one of the things we have been pushing for is for access for everyone. If you look even in terms of knowledge, since the pandemic, you know, a lot of our school children have been engaging in online learning. That is gradually, you know, changing. We're going back to the classroom. But one of the things is to make sure that everyone has access. So there's something that we take for granted, but the pandemic has shown that not everyone has access, internet access, or access to a device. So one of the things we're driving is the more affordable access for the internet and for devices so that everyone is able to participate within this new knowledge society.
Right, Mr. Taylor, you know, reading about CTU, getting ready for this program, it struck me that one of the things that I suspect is going to be a challenge to yourself and your office is the issue with our feeling in the region of CSME and how CSME have performed or not performed.
Right.
And here your CTU is now the digital arm of CSME. And the issue and the question for me to you is this: how do you see CTU unrolling or doing its role in a CSME environment where there is so much pushback on things regarding CSME trade and other aspects of CSME that we don't seem to be getting as a region and understanding? How does CTU see itself function within that kind of environment and to push this so very important aspect of this digital transformation that we see in the world?
Yep.
And where we are, and there's a huge thought that we believe that the CARICOM region is way behind and we're playing a catch-up game.
So we are behind in some aspects, and that's what we're working to do, improve our rankings with respect to international telecommunications, with respect to digital literacy, etc. But there are a lot of positives still happening. You know, we have a very high rate of penetration in terms of mobile phones. A lot of people, even though there is, in fact, you know, those who don't have access, we still have a relatively high level of access to mobile phones. We also have very good telecoms infrastructure. You know the big players in the market, Digicel, Cable and Wireless, and there are some other smaller players. But we have very good fiber connectivity in the region, and fiber is sort of the backbone, critical infrastructure for internet access. So despite the shortcomings in the region, we have some positives. And in fact, I would say that the fiber connectivity within most of our CARICOM countries are better and can rival the United States and the UK.
So, you know, I'm in business, and one of the things we try to look for in business, because we're getting more and more into digital movement of data and all of that, and real-time issues with our platforms. And one of the challenges we face, as you mentioned, Cable and Wireless and Digicel, is redundancy. And you know, in the past, we have had damage to these cables in the Caribbean. And when that damage occurs, there's no redundancy really, because you can't switch from one to the other, both of them using the same cable, basically. So the question is the CTU considering, or is there discussions around that? Because redundancy is going to be a critical thing as we move more and more and more into the digital realm.
Certainly, and resiliency, especially in the aftermath of a natural disaster, is very important. And beyond fiber, there's also satellite connectivity. In fact, we do have private sector membership within the CTU, and one of our private sector members is Viasat, and they provide satellite technology. So when all the terrestrial fiber is down, when everything is flattened, you have direct communication via satellite. So that's part of what we're doing in terms of building resilient infrastructure, in particular in response to natural disasters.
Right, and you know, I'm going to come back, I suppose, a little later to talk about the metaverse and all of that that's happening. I think that was so interesting, but there is the issue of the spectrum and what happens across that spectrum. And I heard you initially speak about accessibility and giving the average person, the average Blow Joe, you know, access to internet and at a rate, and that is an important thing, at a rate and a cost that is affordable. And of course, COVID have accelerated and amplified that situation of ordinary people not having access.
Yes.
How is CTU going to deal with that? Because I know part of your remit is to, as you said, is to increase access at a reasonable cost.
Well, the thing is, why it's so important for us to see the region as one in terms of the single ICT space is that it drives that affordability. So if we take on the big tech companies as Grenada alone, or as Barbados alone, as Trinidad alone, then we are smaller. But when we are able to bargain with them and to be able to develop economies of scale, collectively, then we're able to drive down the cost for the infrastructure and the cost for devices. So that is part of what we're doing to make it cheaper for the telecoms operators to do business, so that they then are able to provide cheaper services and also to bargain with these tech companies collectively, so that we're also able to drive down the cost of those services.
So last question before I hand you over to my friend. The telecom companies will always come back and push back and say the investment costs in the new technology. You know, we're talking a lot about 5G and all of that and so on. They have huge investment costs up front. And I was reading a paper recently where some of the telecoms companies still don't understand really how to cost the services and how to roll it out. And because this thing is rapidly changing in front of them. You come with a new technology today, and in essence, a week, a month from now, the technology would have adjusted and changed. So before they could understand the investment and how to cost it, here comes another change. Is there discussions within the CTU as how, because these investors of this technology, the telecoms company, will always say, boy, we're struggling to keep. And I'm certain you're hearing that.
Absolutely correct. The technology changes so quickly. The investments are very heavy. I mean, millions and millions of dollars go into laying of fiber, provisioning of telecom stations and wireless devices. So to be able to recoup that over long term is difficult in a field that is so rapidly changing. But the investments have to be made. In some cases, governments are also partnering with these telecoms providers to help reduce the cost. Because if you think of telecoms now, it is as critical as the highways. It is critical infrastructure. So for governments to be able to partner with telecoms to help reduce reduce the risk in terms of the investments that they have to make, and to make it more feasible, I think is something that we have to look at as well.
That partner certainly have to tighten.
Definitely.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Sure.
Well, I think this is quite interesting. I just want to say that the ICT, no doubt, is a powerful enabler for growth and development. Particularly, we'll be said, small island, small internal markets, very vulnerable to global economic pressures. So clearly, the transformation to a knowledge-based ICT intensive society could assist in propelling the whole region to the desired level of growth and development that we are seeking. But there's three important, you touched on a few of them, but three very important factors that will contribute to that. One is the educational factor. We have differential levels of educational attainment around the region. We also have we touched on it, the lack of adequate infrastructure or the cost. And the other part to bring it down to the ground is the investments. Where are those three factors in terms of the desired goal, where we want to be?
Well, we're definitely pushing on the skills. We're pushing for, there are a lot of young people now enrolled in computer science programs within the University of the West Indies and other universities, tertiary education. So we are pushing a lot on the skills side of it. We're also making the region more attractive in particular because of the pandemic. You see a lot of Caribbean countries offering what we call digital nomads or citizen, not citizenship, but certainly encouraging people to come to the region because we have the infrastructure here. So a lot of big tech companies, what you'll find is a lot of them come to the Caribbean because for the cost of a beachside villa, right, they could, it was less than an apartment in Manhattan or in London. So the region is becoming much more attractive because we have that infrastructure here for persons to come. So we're attracting the talent down here to work. Because if you can work from anywhere in the world, why not work from a beautiful Caribbean island, right? So, but then we're also, from our young people, the technology allows them to offer their skills to the world. So if you have programming skills, you can work for Google or Facebook or any of those big companies without having to leave the region. So we don't have that brain drain. So I think we're working on different fronts in terms of making sure the infrastructure is here, making sure we have the skills that we can offer the world.
What about the political will? Our regional government leading by example. What about the policy, the legal and regulatory environments? Are they suitable? Are they where you want them to be in terms of for ICT industry growth?
Well, I'm glad you touched on the political will because your Prime Minister Keith Mitchell, is the CARICOM lead on science and technology, and that's one of the reasons I'm here this week to meet with him. And yes, he has provided excellent leadership. And in fact, the CARICOM heads of government meet next week in Belize, and technology is one of the items on the agenda and how we can harmonize within the space and drive investments within the sector. So there is the political will. CARICOM heads of government, in fact, approved the single ICT space in 2017. And since then, we've been working on things like roaming, reducing roaming within the region, harmonizing policy and legislation to drive down the cost of telecom services. So the political will is there. The CTU is here to help support the policy decisions of the CARICOM heads of government.
What has COVID, what was the implications for COVID? Are there opportunities? What's the upside? What's the downside? What does that mean for ICT?
Well, let's deal with the downside. We all know that there's been a huge economic fallout, right? Tourists have stopped coming in the numbers that they've done. But what the positive side is that it has driven governments to accelerate the implementation of online services. And many governments have moved things like driver's license, police certificates of character, even entry into the country now, it is done online. So it has accelerated the pace at which we're moving in the digital direction, and it has highlighted where we need to pay greater attention to. So there's the economic fallout, but I think we will come out stronger as a result, and certainly from a technological point of view, we will be able to incorporate those tools into our everyday lives and make life easier for citizens.
Excellent. Chris, I know you want to talk about the megaverse.
Yeah, but just before Senator Ali come in, I just want to pick up on, you mentioned, just mentioned that you need to pay attention to areas that you can improve. So our common service sectors, Secretary General, that is tourism, education, trade, commerce, transportation, water, energy, all those things, those common areas. How do these come better regionally through ICT, and what do you envision? What is the mission really?
There isn't a single sector, you mentioned them, tourism, agriculture, manufacturing, there isn't, even education, there isn't a sector that is not impacted by technology. So even tourism, right, we've seen the rise of platforms like Airbnb that have impacted the tourism market. You've seen ride-sharing applications where tourists now expect to get off the plane and be able to call a taxi on a mobile phone. So even in energy, there's smart energy grids. So how do we manage the electricity more efficiently? How do we farm more efficiently using smart technology? So in an ideal scenario, and we look to countries like Estonia and so on that have been long invested and involved in technology, and we talk about digital transformation or national digital transformation, which is that every sector is using technology in a more efficient way and using artificial intelligence and smart devices to be more productive and to be able to make our businesses more competitive globally.
Okay. Senator Ali?
Yeah, I think the transformation is even more significant in the financial services sector. When you see what's happening in financial services with banking and credit unions and so on, and even our ECCB moving to digital cash and all of those things, cryptocurrencies and all of those different kind of platforms and blockchain, I have seen where organizations and businesses are now bringing in, when we normally do this training for trainees coming out, and now we want only people with ICT to train, because it is transforming even careers for the young people.
Yes.
The need for ICT people in, let's say, financial services. You have cybersecurity to deal with. You have data manipulation, even in business.
Yeah.
We mine data and we do a lot of things. So the need for ICT in business now is becoming so significant that we are saying to universities and schools and so on, when we bring in people to train in our business, we want, if we are to bring in 20 people, we want 15 of them to be in ICT. Or understanding, because our businesses are transforming so significant that is an issue.
Yeah, there is a global shortage in skills, in fact. You mentioned cybersecurity. That is one of the skills that is in so much in demand, because as we roll out these services, they have to be done securely. And so there is definitely a global shortage in these skills, but we are working with universities and stuff to ensure that we are adequately resourced in that respect.
And I was talking earlier about this metaverse, and I think that is such an interesting thing that when I did some of the research and to understand the whole use of the internet, as they coin it in some terms, and to understand how the word virtual reality, and seems to be such an enigma that you can't have reality in the virtual world.
Yeah.
It is going to transform our socialization, I think. And talking about avatars, and somebody asked, what's an avatar? I never hear this. What is that? I mean, I mean, our generation, but certainly for the young people who have been in this VR world and understanding what it is, how do you see that impacting the social, face-to-face, human-to-human interaction?
Well, you can never, I think technology will supplement, it will support that interaction, but there will always be that need for physical social interaction. So, I mean, our young people, as you well know, this is how they spend most of their time, right? In the virtual world, engaging with friends from across the world. But that face-to-face, I'd rather come to Grenada and go on the beach than to do it virtually, by 3D glasses. So there will always be a place for that, and technology is supposed to improve our lives and improve how we interact socially, not take away from that. So
yeah, and just to follow up on that, when you see what is happening with terms of AI technology, robotics, I saw recently on a news reel that the monitoring of the borders between the United States and Mexico is now done by robotic dogs. Yeah. No longer humans traveling up and down. Yeah. And of course, how that is going to less people, of course, and and less issues with a man not turning up to work, and there's a lot of advantages. Of course, there's a disadvantage. So there's going to be a dislocation of how we understand what we do and how we do. And when you combine that with AI and what's happening in the military, that's another whole discussion we could have for a whole day.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to predict where the technology will go, because the advances are now so rapid. You mentioned artificial intelligence. It's being powered as well by blockchain and the increases in computing
and there's
power.
heavy block trading in the metaverse.
For sure. I mean, millions and millions and millions of dollars being traded. So there are big opportunities, and it is difficult now, even though we talk about the metaverse, to say what it will be. It's like when the internet first came.
Yes.
It's difficult to see how it would have evolved over the 20, 30 years, but the same for the metaverse.
Yeah. And it's virtual reality, but then it is almost like, how is the metaverse really competing with the real universe, and how it's impacting our socialization, and how quick we are catching up, because it just seems to be mushrooming.
Yeah, and very soon I'm sure we will be just putting on glasses, and we're interacting with the real world and the virtual world. So what is referred to as augmented reality, right? So you're interacting with the real world, augmented by, you put your glasses on and it directs you where to walk and that kind of thing.
So much adjustments to make.
How does this CTU, Secretary General, position our country, small island developing states in the CARICOM, position us to benefit and to take advantage of these technologies that's going to come?
Well, we participate in international discussions, international bodies that set the standards for these technologies, such as the International Telecommunications Union, such as the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, and there are a number of international meetings happening. In fact, next week there's the World Telecom Standards Assembly held by the ITU, which talks about standards in technology and cybersecurity and wireless communications and all of that. So we participate, and we very often we have meetings that prepare the region. Right? Collectively, we call a Caribbean meeting, and we talk about what's being discussed on the agenda and how we can, advance our own positions within these international bodies.
Great.
As you talk about the technology and stuff, I know the use of or devices or laptops or telephones, especially our telephones, and mobile services is a big deal, because wherever you are in the world and you go with your phone, you can continue to do business.
Yes.
You can lay on the beach all day
Certainly.
and do business on your phone.
Exactly.
And as such, when you listen to people across the region, there is that concern about standards. Use the word standards for the telecommunications companies. And I don't want to preempt your announcements here in Grenada this week, but I mean, it is a true concern for Caribbean people, and I trust that at the level of the CTU and of course with our government's regional, our Prime Minister being the lead, that we start turning the corner on this. Because as we look at markets as Africa and so, where it's like, oh, come on, we have to do better.
Yes. So there is definitely a push towards standardization, because some of the companies I mentioned run pan-Caribbean operations. So they've built networks across the region, and it's really one contiguous network. Yes, we are sovereign states, but in terms of how we manage spectrum, the CTU actually manages the Spectrum Management Task Force, so we agree on how we allocate spectrum across the region. So there is a greater push towards standardization. The bodies that I mentioned to you, the ITU and ICANN and so on, help us in that respect. So we are making a greater push to increase the level of standardization, because that will drive the cost down and will increase the investment in the sector.
I want to ask you about your your country, your home. Barbados being the first country to have a metaverse embassy.
Yes. Well, my home is really the Caribbean. It certainly is Barbados. I love the region, and yes. But I've seen, so Barbados has announced it is going to establish an embassy in the metaverse. It will give us a virtual presence, so to speak, and it increases, the profile of the country. But I've also seen some other countries like St. Vincent that has announced they want to hold a virtual carnival as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of things you can get creative in how you market your country, how you sell your services in the metaverse.
I thought that was rather interesting.
Yeah.
The traditional embassy, you have to have bodies and buildings and the cost that goes with that. Whereas in this virtual metaverse world,
for children that have grown up,
you have to enter the space. You must enter the space.
For sure.
Yeah, and a way to do it is through things like establishing embassies and doing a lot of cultural things that are interesting.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. So we could throw a spice mass in a metaverse. We
Brilliant. And that would be the precursor to the real mass. Give them a taste and then they come to the real thing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Secretary General Taylor. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know you have many calls on your time, and you're going to be quite busy this week.
Yes.
But please take the time to enjoy Grenada.
I certainly
all that
will.
we have to offer. Make sure you leave with some chocolate and some rum. I know you Bajans figure you have the rum of rum.
No,
I have not had rum until you taste some Grenadian rum.
I know very well. In fact, I spent my honeymoon in Grenada.
Nice.
Yeah, 26 years ago. I'm still married as well.
Oh, nice.
So I love Grenada.
Excellent.
Right.
Thank you.
So thank you so very much.
My
Enjoy
pleasure.
the rest of the day. We will be speaking to Secretary General of the CTU, Mr. Rodney Taylor. He's here in Grenada this week, doing some much needed ICT business, regional business that is. A special guest with us this week. So stay tuned. There'll be other announcements as Mr. Taylor visits expands through the end of the week. All right, so gentlemen.
Well, we did promise that we're going to get a little into the politics.
You have to, Chris.
I mean, this is the time season.
A lot's been happening,
By when we're betting, we're starting to bet.
Our first bet is the time of the election. I said before June, what you said. By June.
Keeping that.
So there's no bet here because we're on the same
page.
You all agree that it's going to be before June?
Yeah.
By June.
By June. But there's a between before and by.
And we've seen the things ramping
up. We
up.
have no information official. This is just our sense of
let's call it the belly feeling.
The
good
belly feeling.
So you all haven't been having secret talks with the doctor?
Belly
No,
feeling.
no, absolutely.
Yeah,
Let me
not.
watch all it carefully. Look me in the eye and say that.
Yes,
Having no
this is
secret
a-
Oh,
talks
okay, all
with
right.
the doc.
I ain't really think doctors have no secret talk with nobody about this date,
About
nah?
this, that's in his pocket. That's in his pocket.
But
Chris,
we saw the announcement by NDC of the 7
interesting
caretaker
week.
candidates.
Yeah, interesting week. That's the first 7. You still have another 8 to
to
go.
come. Mm-hmm.
I've been listening to some of the commentaries on the selection. They're not mine, but there are others, and I think I thought it was important. One had to do with the fact that in building, there was a comment to the fact that when you put a slate together, you're thinking about governance, you're thinking about management, you're thinking about the economy, the growth of the country, policies, and therefore, what do you need? What are the talents you need to formulate those things, to lead? And some of the pundits were saying they didn't see this in the first 7 candidates, So I said, look, well, there's another 8 to go. Maybe that 8 will really complement. So it was premature to really make an overarching statement about the inadequacy of these candidates.
Well, I would support that to some degree, but I believe there is, to me, when I'm looking at what is happening, there is a definite intent to change the face of the party,
Yeah.
the NDC's party, in terms of more youthful persons, young, and it's good to see young people getting involved in the politics. That's a positive sign from where I sit. But you cannot divorce that from the experiential aspect of what is required. And I look at it from an environmental point of view, and a certain environment our country faces, the COVID situation, the economic situation, foreign international relations, and all of those things. You must have people to support you in the back, and I'm not certain they don't, but even the frontline people need to have the level of maturity, for want of a better word, in dealing with these things. Now, just maneuvering within the public service is a huge, I don't want to use the word animal, but it's a huge bureaucracy that needs to understand the interplay and what happens there and how it functions. And, traditionally, our public services, you have NDCites, you have NPites, you have different people. When one party wins over the other, there is, there is issues with that. So I think how you maneuver and how you get that, and, Barbados election as an example, I saw Mr. Wickham say the central issue was COVID and how to manage COVID before and into the future. And people voted apparently along that line. They felt that the current party, the incumbent, managed relatively well, and they were willing to go with them again to give them an opportunity to continue managing in the future. And the question has to be, do we see that happening here in our elections when it comes?
What are likely to be the issues, though?
Right.
In our election.
And would COVID be central? And how people foresee. And
is COVID coming back to be central, do you believe?
I think, because...
I think a post, what happened in COVID that spooked the hell out of the human race. And a post-COVID world, that was going to be compelling in terms of governance wherever. And that is a central question that has to be answered by any political party, the incumbent and those aspiring to take office. And so based on that those are the sort of questions that are going to be answered. What is a post-COVID Grenada? What are we building? What do we want? What is the dynamics of the global sphere? What is the compelling reason for the electorate to change the government? That's for those aspiring. Those in there, why should we keep you on? And we have to get to the point where we're thinking about that. And people putting themselves up, they have to respect us enough to understand that they need to give us messaging that would make us take them, in a very serious sense. And so it is, we get caught up in the personalities because we're a small island, we know each other. And at the end of the day, politics is seeing, hearing, feeling. But a big part of it is feeling. And we cannot divorce ourselves from that.
I want to take your point.
A big part of it is feeling.
Yeah, because,
a big part of it is feeling. And it is our interactions with something. It is our experience with something. It is our wonderment of something. It is our perception of something, real or imagined. All these dynamics. And so people really need to think about these things.
You know, when you go in a booth to vote, Byron, you vote, I vote, it comes down to a personal decision that you're making.
Yeah.
And that personal decision to me transforms into what you believe as a person you can gain by putting this party or not putting this party in power. And it is very personal. So as Brenda is talking about the feeling and the perceptions and where people see themselves 5 years hence or whatever, 10 years hence, is very personal. So people vote along the personal aspect of it. And that is where the politician has to...
I mean, just to use myself as an example, I don't like to do it, but let me do this. You enter, there was 2017, which year we wasn't sure. They had NDC, they had NNP, and then
13?
Glynis Roberts. What was her party?
NDC.
No, she went off on her own. What was the party again?
Independent.
The color was blue.
Yeah.
My favorite color.
It didn't register.
Yeah.
Is URP? What was it?
One of those, yes.
Right. Oh, the United something front, something like that. Right. So I entered the polling booth very undecided. I was not going to vote. My mother was in the UK. Remember, she called and said, make sure, get up in that house, you and your sister, go and vote. My sister, who you voting for? I don't know. I say, who you voting for? She say who she voting for.
Yeah.
I say, I don't know, but I'm going to go. I'm going to go to work, and at some point, I'm going to go. Because 2013, I was not, I don't know what was going on. Oh, yeah. So I went into there. Didn't know. And you enter the polling booth, and there is this thing that you have. I experienced it in 2018 as well. But in 2013, I went in there not sure. And when I looked at the candidates, I voted based on how I felt about the individual I voted for. That's how I voted.
So you didn't vote for the party? You
No,
voted for the
I
individual.
looked because I was unsure.
Right.
And that's why I talk about feeling.
Yeah.
And a lot of people may dismiss it. Not in Grenada. Don't dismiss feeling. I went in there and I was like, yeah, but you know, they're all right. Yeah, I know, but no. There was one I was like, But then when my final decision came down to how I felt about the individual.
Another dimension of the election, Chris, or certainly is the issue of ageism. Clearly,
it is discrimination.
One party is clearly flouting a youthful and articulating a youthful position, whereas the other one is going with a more integrated and more balanced approach. The question is, should it matter? Should it be intergenerational? Should it be, I mean, what's the best mix, really?
Mr. Campbell, you know, the ageism thing, just to, okay, so there's mix of there's, for the parties, it has to be demographic, right? Age or youth.
Yeah.
But ageism is discrimination.
Yeah.
By saying a person is too young, and by saying a person is too old, and by saying a person needs to go and lie down, that is ageism, and that is discriminatory.
Right, yeah.
Having intergenerational or saying, you know, it's a different thing. But I think both parties need to stop. Because saying, go and let the old man lie down, you are dismissing elder people. I have run into people say, okay, Grenada look as if it's only young people that are living in it now. So all right, they go see when I go and vote. You don't want to do that. It is a numbers game. You want to add. You do not want to subtract. If you are behind, there is a party in the last general election that scored 8,000 more than you did. So what you want to do is to close the gap. So saying people old, my mother old, and she said, so all you don't want young people, old people in Grenada again. Hear what they're saying on the radio. I said, Mommy, who said that? She telling me who said that. I said, that's just political talk. She said, but Brenda, no, they can't be saying things like that, right? Then the other set of people, oh, they're young. Oh, is a daycare. Oh, is, you see, we need to stop.
That's
we need
true,
to stop.
because I always remember one of the first statements made by the political leader of the NDC is that I don't expect a 70-year-old farmer to use technology. You know, so that kind of mindset of if you're young, you do one thing, and if you're old,
70-year-old farmers are using technology.
But you have to. You want to encourage all farmers to use technology, and they do actually, you know. So I think it's something that, as you said, Brenda,
But
both
I-
parties should be careful about
Yes,
Yes.
and
ageism
I
and
agree
how
with
it
Because
Brenda
one
on
of
the
the things-
discrimination, but to
Yeah.
me there is another element that is more important,
Yeah.
and that is leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the leadership that
Yeah.
comes forward, whether you're
Yeah.
young or you're old,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to be of a certain age to be a leader of a particular type
No.
and to lead properly and effectively. So that to me dismisses the age issue
Yeah.
to a certain degree. But yes, the age issue will be there, and as Brenda said, you need to manage that and get away from this. Either you're too young or you're too old. And,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
get,
yeah.
and
It's
like
turning
you,
off people.
Byron, there is this thing about the mix, and I think the ideal thing is to have young with more mature.
Intergenerational.
That's
Yeah,
right, because what happens here is that our young people are far more energetic, far more nimble, they can do
Risk
things quicker,
adverse, energetic,
but you
and
need,
that's
you need the
important,
more
yeah.
mature people to
Yeah.
temper that to
Yeah.
some degree.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is why, even in business,
Yeah, even
when we
in
do succession planning and we bring in younger people, the successors have to stay with the older or the more mature guys for a period of time
Yeah,
to
your
temper
mentor and your
them.
mentee.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's
So
important.
that to me is always the ideal situation. So they're going to one divide over the next. I don't think
Yeah.
is a discussion.
No, it's dangerous.
And-
It's very
Exactly.
dangerous.
Exactly.
And I
And
always-
I'll tell you what again is that, you know, you have to pay attention. Elections is a numbers game. You have to pay attention to your demographical voters.
Yeah.
And yes, we have a very youthful population. How many of them registered?
Well,
You know, how many, I mean, and they will tell you, you know, you engage young people and they'll tell you, I am not excited by X, Y, and Z. I think I need to see B, maybe a third option. People will tell you that, right? But at the same time, though, last week there was a lot of, you know, jokes and all of
Yeah.
that. You know us already. We get a little, and that's it.
Yeah.
We should never lose our comedic
Yeah.
thing about as Grenadians. It's one of the most beautiful things about us. But I'll say this, that the NDC, we know for the last couple election cycles, have really not been in a very strong position as a political party. They have been, you know, I mean, 15 love, and then having their own internal struggles with the changing of the
Yeah.
leadership, you know,
Yeah.
and so forth, and planting that seed
Yeah.
of doubt. So October came, they had their convention, they got, you know, a new dynamic leader in that of Deacon Mitchell, and the party, you know, it became excited,
Yeah.
and I mean,
Yeah.
it started to look as, you know, so we have a viable
that's a
option.
good thing.
And for the next election, we
Yeah.
have a contest
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Now, this is a party that is rebuilding itself like
Yeah.
any business, any organization, and looking to create a new path, if you will, right? So somebody might be watching and saying, that's not only business. Yes, it is. We are in Grenada. It is our business. Let's move on. So they have chosen to, of course, they must field 15 candidates to be a viable option in the next general election. Right? There's a newness, there is almost a new energy. They want to rebrand. I'm sure the new leader wants to chart a new course. And leaders are normally given that opportunity. Grenada is a place in the background. There's a lot of people that's, let me use local words, gas you up. Yes, Brenda, get him. Yeah, yes, get rid of that. I'll give you this, I'll give you that. When it is time to put their foot forward, nah, boy, I think I'll stay in the background, eh? I'll give you, nah, boy, I think I'll stay in the background. So all the people that Deacon Mitchell announced last week that we are criticizing, we need to stop. Because they have done something that a lot of us did not do, and we hide in and playing games. So let us just give them that respect, that they have stepped forward, their family, their careers, their whatever, and said, here am I. I put in my hand up. I am here to represent. Right?
That's
The results
positive.
depend on us.
that's
But the
excellent.
criticism of them as individuals, or as it is, let us just pull back a bit.
But
Right?
remember, you know,
And
Brenda,
those in the
remember.
back with the gassing up,
Remember,
We need to be mindful of those.
Politics as we know it in the Caribbean is not a nice game.
no,
And
it
can
has a
get very
morality
dirty.
of its own.
But I want to throw in another thing here, Byron, and that is the financing.
Yeah.
And campaign financing
Yeah.
and what is happening around that. And, you know, you're seeing parties now putting out more, and and you're seeing different things happening. I know in the past we've always talked about campaign financing laws. It has never materialized because politicians believe it's too restrictive and it restricts them in order to get their money. But do you think that is something that is going to crop up in this election cycle?
Well, what's interesting, Chris, because the last election, the is it CARICOM committee, the Observer Committee? This
the OAS?
This is one of the this is one of the recommendations that they made.
Yes.
Election campaigning, financing reforms. But I don't think this has gone anywhere. I don't think it has happened. But clearly, in this election, maybe not as much as previous elections. In other words, you're not going to see, well, I predict that, massive kind of rallies with song stars and artists and that type of thing. You may see a more
social media,
a mix anyway, certainly. Money is going to be important. Campaigning calls for money. You still have to mobilize, you still have to get resources and platforms and so forth. So it's important, and therefore, without a doubt, having resources makes a difference. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
It does.
advertising and what you do on that media platform is going to be important.
Another thing they have to be mindful about, though, is that we still live in a world with elections in particular where messaging needs, all forms of messaging needs to be utilized. All right? So people who, the elections won't be decided on social media, okay?
No.
There are a good 40% of people that's not on there. Right?
It's
and
true.
some of them, all a person need to win the election is a little 10%.
Yeah.
So bear that in mind.
Yeah.
So you need to use all your touch points, wherever people are, all your traditional methods. We're now easing up with the COVID and all of that. You need to, I remember I spoke about feeling. People need to feel you.
Yeah.
You need to, if anybody who can get to knock on every door in their constituency, or 65% of those doors, through their agents or they themselves showing up, all power to you. Do it.
That's going to be
Do
critical.
it.
But do you think the PEO is ready?
The
Parliamentary Elections Office. Because that's another critical call.
I know, for example, right now that two things that is happening. One is the reissuing of identifications, but I'm told that it is not it wouldn't be a criteria for voting, but persons are still encouraged to re-register. And the second part is registrations for new entrants, persons turning 18 or who have turned 18 or persons
I
not
looked
registered
again last
before.
night. It went up last week.
It went up again. So that's excellent. So that's
Keeps going up.
So that's very good. Happy about that, you know, because it's important that persons are registered. Need to know that if you're not registered, you might support a political party, but you won't be able to vote.
That's right.
You know, that's important.
And you know, just judging from the latest election in Barbados and the voter turnout, which was relatively low, you know, is another issue that you have to factor in, and what is going to happen with the list and people registered and getting there.
The
and
question,
so on,
though, might be: do they want a new registration, a new card? As the
if you're a new
ID,
registered,
or are
it's
they
going to be
using
a new
it,
card.
or they, you know, are they? But when you look at the numbers, they are going up. So it tells you that there's work going on out there
There's
to
interest,
register individuals.
But
so that is a good
But
sign.
let me try it in another way. If you're the incumbent,
and
you're getting ready for this election and you want to energize your base and so on, the projects, the unemployment issue, putting monies in people's hands, you know, how important is that for the incumbent to show that, you know, they have this economy, they're managing it, and, you know, if you vote me in again, this is what I intend to do?
Well, this brings confidence, you know, because you vote, Brenda, again, you're feeling, is this political party, and sometimes people tend to vote and think on a personal level, what are the opportunities for me or for the country? Is this, if I'm a businessman, for example, I'm thinking, do we have the talent there to promote a growth economy? What's the experience, you know? Versus, does this new entrants really know what they're talking about? Do I have the confidence that they have the wisdom and the skills to do this? So if I'm a business person, I'm thinking along that line. For young persons, I'm saying, is this, and let me make this point that I live in a village and I interface with diverse persons and young people included. And it's not automatic. I'm not hearing that. This is not coming across that because there's a youth representation, that the youth would automatically. It doesn't work
No,
that way.
no.
It's not working that way at
Yeah.
all, and it's consistent.
Yeah.
That it's not going to
we
work
need to
that
remove
way.
that illusion from.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because I'm picking it up consistently. That's not a factor.
They are more independent in their thinking.
Yeah.
And they will, when
Far
you
more.
engage them, they
Yeah,
are
yeah,
telling
yeah,
you,
yeah, yeah,
they are telling you the pros and cons
Yeah.
of the entire cycle.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
they give you a good 360
Yeah.
of how, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it will take a lot
Yeah, yeah.
to convince them, not just through their pairs
yeah,
or
yeah.
putting up their
Yeah,
pairs
yeah.
or showing whatever. It's
yeah.
going to take a lot
Yeah.
more. And for the most part, they seem to think that they are not well represented in the current
Yeah.
dynamic. And so you're getting a feeling that, you know, they'll be more excited by maybe something else. What is that something else? I do not know. But it may very well come down to a point where they ask themselves the question, and I go back to that. What is the compelling reason for you to continue to lead? And why should I elect you to come to office?
So it's going to be an interesting period.
I think it
certainly.
will be, it will be.
I would like to speak to some of those persons. I like to.
Well, you know, Byron, I've always articulated, and I always keep pushing that we need to have a debate, whether it's of the leaders,
Yeah.
whether it is of constituency
Seats,
reps,
yeah.
some level of debate so that, you know, they could come before the cameras, come before the people and say, you know, I represent Gov, I am going to do this or not for this. This is how I think about policy and going forward, whether it's youth policy, social issues, economic issues.
And I'm hopeful that this would come.
Yeah,
actually. It's
and I
important.
mean, I always believe that we do our voting populace a disadvantage, a huge disadvantage, by not taking these persons who put up themselves. And Brenda have said, you know, they put up their hand and they say, I'm here, I'm taking part. But that's just the first part of it.
Yeah.
The second part of it,
What am I about?
what are you about? And I think we miss an opportunity when we don't put hard questions to them to
Yeah.
really test them and
Yeah.
to understand what it is they're thinking they need to do, even though it's articulating their party's policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, we have to wait on not the referendum, what do you call the thing that the parties has put out again, the manifesto.
Manifesto, yeah.
You know, and that is going to be another major interesting
to discuss
document
that. Yeah,
to see
to discuss that. Yeah.
what is going to be done differently or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And I look forward to that because one of the things I say, you know, in our country, we have always known agriculture, tourism, services, education services. Traditional. CBI is probably the only
Well, CBI and
different thing.
ICT,
Right,
now we have
so
a metaverse.
we don't really have much room around that. So
Yeah.
it's what is it that you're coming to
How's
do
your life
differently
changing?
to accelerate, to make me enthusiastic about these things and
Exactly,
so on. And
exactly.
for us in business, how are you going to give me the confidence to ensure that my tax regime is going to remain a certain way, the confidence of the society where you want to bring it, that I am sure my business environment is going to be protected. There's a lot of these
Yeah.
issues
There's
and
not-
And it
questions.
can't
you know?
just be about because change works on the psychology.
Yeah.
So you hear change and then
Yeah.
you become relaxed
Yeah.
and you open
Yeah.
to what's
Yeah.
coming towards you regarding change. But it just can't be a blanket change. What do you want to change?
That's right. That's
What
the
do
point.
you want to change?
That's the point.
How are we doing this change? How are you exciting me to change?
And they're very
Right?
important.
Because once
yeah,
you identify
yeah,
that
yeah.
we need to change,
yeah.
what are we changing?
So, for example, in
Why
agriculture,
are we
Yeah.
changing? Where
what
are
is it
we
you're coming
going?
with differently in agriculture that we have been doing for the last 40 years?
Precisely. What are you
is it
going to
gonna
do
be
to
different?
attract more young persons into the sector?
That's
you
right.
know, and with that work, because it's one thing to talk about.
Or bring the 55-year-old and 65-year-old farmer up to speed.
So-
You see, we cannot leave out, you see, that's the problem. We keep leaving out a demographic.
You can't.
And that's why you have my mother saying, Brenda,
Yeah.
what happened?
Yeah.
Grenada is
That's-
only
that's
for young
correct.
people
No,
now.
absolutely
We need to be careful.
Very, very, very
We
careful.
need to be
I am
careful.
a 50s person that I'm
Yeah.
going back into agriculture when I retire, and I want to do it differently.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And the other important thing is the financing. It's one thing to say, look, we're going to do A, B, C, D, and do. How are you going to do it? Where's the finance going to come from? How are you going to raise that money? You know, and these are the kind of detailed questioning that we would like to see once manifestos come up. You know, to really go through them, because words are words.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, confidence is a big thing. Anyway,
Confidence is a
I
big
think we have a lot more to talk about.
I think so, definitely.
Few
We'll see
weeks
how it
and
goes.
months.
But
And
yeah.
I'm hoping that our producers could bring in one or two
Oh, we had some
political
interesting things
personalities
happening
I
last
think
week
so.
too, you
to
know.
come in to have a chat with us.
Yeah,
On
this
the
is important.
18th
I'm looking
of-
forward
on
to
the
that.
8th
Let's
on the-
tell the director that, right?
Yeah.
On the 18th of February, that's last week, Uncle Gary was 100 years old.
Yeah.
And on that
Yeah.
day, there was a raging feud.
Yes.
My friend, cousin Michael, came out,
Yeah.
and
And,
there seemed to be some drama again for the GULP.
yeah,
Yeah.
Mr. Batiste have announced that he's coming back in the
Yeah.
fray with, Mr. Prudhomme, who's in the background.
Yeah.
So reviving the GULP. That's
We
another,
will-
that's
we will-
another
but
thing we
it's-
have to
I
talk
like
about.
that
in
Gary
there.
must be
Batiste
turning
made some
the center.
statement that I thought was relevant. I thought it was fair. You
Yes,
know.
he did.
But another
on-
thing we had to talk about, Byron, is the amount of players. We're hearing a lot about independent candidates,
Yeah.
you know, different parties coming back, and how that's going to break up the votes.
Yeah.
And the
You know,
impact
but-
on who is going
yeah,
to who is going to gain the
but
advantage.
people's but the punditry seem to be dismissing independence, and so listen, this
Yeah.
we live in a time. Do not dismiss anybody.
No,
do not
no,
dismiss
I-
anybody,
you know, you're
and
hearing
let
a lot of
people come in
conversations.
because to me. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so people might say, oh, so, you know, they need to show me what or not. But a lot of the people who we think might have influence or they might have a certain standing in society, them people that stay in the back and gas up people. They never put their foot forward.
Yeah.
So we have to be appreciative of all those who say, here am I.
Yeah.
I am ready to
Congratulations.
go.
No,
Yes.
I mean, that is,
Ultimately to them.
that is without doubt. That you
And we
must-
wish them well.
must- oh, yeah. Politics in our societies are not easy.
And there was some interesting news as well of talks between former NDC person and some NNP people in the Northeast. There's lots of conversations
And that's,
going
and that's
around.
healthy, and that's good, you know.
Grenada is spicy, it's dynamic, it's interesting. Another thing about the party politics, there are no permanent friends or enemies.
Oh,
Yeah.
That has
And
said
some of
by-
us has get too caught up in the nonsense.
that was said by
There are
Mr.
no permanent
Pandey.
friends
Yeah.
or
Of Trinidad.
enemies.
Yeah.
Yes, Basdeo Pandey
No
was the
permanent.
was
first
the one
person
who
to say
said
that.
that.
Yeah.
And the
And that was so
politics thing
true.
have its own morality. Mind all your business. Drink a
gonna
lot
be-
of water too.
There are a lot of fun coming up. So our producers are going to make sure we get some personalities to
Of
chat.
course,
Yeah.
the producers have to bring in the personal. What about Mr. Tobias Clement?
Well, you know, independence. Here we go again.
Yeah.
He made a formal announcement.
No. It's been rumored that
Yeah.
there will be,
Okay.
you know.
We was having dialogue with the NDC.
Yeah.
No, didn't that break down?
Yes, it
Okay.
appeared there
Okay.
because Senator Sincere became a party member of
Okay.
the NDC. That was
Okay.
announced. And
Okay.
so on. And she was one of his
Right,
people
right.
that So I don't know. A lot of dynamics, a lot of things happening.
And that's healthy.
And the 16th constituency is very active in the whole spiel.
Yeah.
You know the 16th constituency, the diaspora.
Yes.
Yes, so we welcome that. But
Yeah.
some of you create a little too much confusion. Yeah? Yeah.
Good.
But it's all welcome. We all love Grenada, and we want the best for Grenada. All right? So, again, gentlemen, thanks for a great
Thank you.
show. Have a good week. Watch the politics.
We
Keep
will.
your eyes on the ball and your ears on the ground.
It's going to be fun.
Senator
Yeah.
Daly?
Yes.
Yeah. You putting your hand up?
No, you know, I'm one of the background people.
You are gasser?
No,
Oh.
I'm a background person. I ain't gassing at all. But I'm in the background. I have always said that I made a choice to stay in Grenada. And
yeah.
live here, and I want to
I just talk about
You
politics.
ser- you serve in
As we
many
talk-
different
As we talk
ways.
about politics, I understand that the NNP has a major, not convention, is it convention you
The
call it?
NNP's convention is
Yeah.
soon, isn't it?
Are there, yeah? Okay. So that should be
I suppose
interesting.
by that time we get a firm understanding of their caretakers and candidates.
And
candidates.
right,
They're 50.
right,
Right, exactly.
right.
Because
right.
they only
that's
announced
clear.
3.
And all of that, Chris, again, leads us and influences us in terms of where our prediction for the election
Ah,
lies.
because anything could happen after the convention, right?
right.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Or sometimes
all
a
you
date,
know, all you
a
think.
date,
have
a date
cricket.
could be announced on the
Yes,
convention.
of course. We have cricket coming also.
March.
Yeah, so I think it's post-cricket, certainly.
Yeah, and
You think it's after cricket?
I think so, post-cricket.
yeah, and I mean, Prime Minister, I would think, even that convention, normally some Prime Ministers announce it in a convention.
Convention, that, yeah,
You
okay.
know, and to hype up
Yeah.
the base and
Yeah.
to get them ready
Yeah.
for the action to come.
Yeah.
You know, so
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm
shall
getting
see.
word that Sunday is NNP's convention.
Yeah.
Oh, Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday
Okay.
coming.
Interesting.
Yes.
We might get an announcement.
Probably. Yeah.
Let's wait and see.
Okay.
I'm told there is a very prominent keynote speaker.
Okay.
We'll wait to see who that is.
Okay.
Okay, excellent,
Okay.
excellent.
Yes.
And you know, the Secretary General of CTU is here, and he has a major announcement to make.
They have
sometime
some
today.
major announcements.
So a lot of
yeah.
major things,
Happening.
announcements
Yeah,
coming.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, major announcements.
Announcements.
Ah. I can't tell them, look at children, wait for it.
Anyway, folks,
Yeah. Yeah.
We gotta go. We gotta
Yes, we
go.
have to
Have
go.
a great week, everyone. Have a great, great week. Thank you so much, Mr. Campbell and Senator Daly, and to Secretary General Rodney Taylor of the CTU, who was our special guest panelist this morning. We must thank our producer and our technical team here who get us on air every Monday morning. We don't take it for granted at all, especially these mornings. Jarell Cole, they're leaving their wives and thing in bed, right? So executive producer Richie Oliver, Blondell George, he's our director, Nazim Benjamin, who provides our streaming services, and Kirk Oliver, our camera person. All the entities who brought the broadcast, we thank you so very much. Let's have a great week. Be good, be kind, say bye to February, welcome in March next Monday. Is next Monday?
the
Or next
love-
Tuesday?
the love month.
Yeah.
March, yes. Senator Dially's birthday, International Women's Day, March 13th. Who knows? Might be the announcement of the election. We don't
A
know.
lot of
We
thing in
don't
March,
know. So stay tuned. March it is. Have a great week, everyone. Be kind to each other. I'm Brenda. Bye-bye.